Hello again, whiskey friends. Thanks for joining, everybody. Today, we're going to go over the 5 best rye whiskeys I have found in 2026 thus far. To me, rye whiskey is a very underappreciated category, and we are living at a time where there is more rye whiskey and variety on the market than I think people even realize. So many different mash bills, so many different profiles. And as we go through this list, every single one of these is going to be unique in some way. So thank you for joining the Whiskey Friends. Let's kick off the show. All right. Very excited to go through today's list. Today's list features distillate from like 3 to 4 different states around the country, with mash bills ranging from having 51% rye all the way up to 95% rye, really showcasing the diversity of this category. Before we get into today's list, hey, be sure to hit that like and subscribe. And if you'd like to follow Hello Again Whiskey Friends even further down this bourbon journey, there are links in the description to join our private Facebook group or our Patreon. For Patreon, you can even join that for free, though we do give priority to those that support us when it comes to our barrel picks. And on the subject of ryes, we even have a 13-year rye coming out soon, as well as a 16-year Canadian rye that was finished in Armagnac. Some really fun barrels are on their way to this community. So let's get into today's list. Number 5. Really excited to be talking about this brand again. It does feel like I took about a year to almost 18 months off from having anything new from this particular brand, and they have always been one of my favorites. But first, we're getting into a whiskey from Indiana, Hard Truth Sweet Mash Rye, aged 7 years. And this was a blend that was released earlier this year, blending 10 different barrels and coming out at 107 proof. I have been enjoying Hard Truth since it's essentially been like 3-year-old whiskey. So now to see them get to age statements as high as 7 years on the bottle is always exciting. And this one may be my favorite amongst the new 7-year line that they released earlier this year. But for those not familiar with Hard Truth, they are in Brown County, Indiana. Beautiful campus to visit, surrounded by these amazing woods and a great restaurant. That facility opened up in 2018. They released their first rye in 2021, and that was that 3-year rye I was referring to earlier. A couple years ago, we even had the privilege of selecting a single barrel of Hard Truth rye. We called that one the Franchi Bunch, and it is an apricot and peach bomb. It is delicious. The mash bill on this is 94% rye, 6% malted barley. And notice the term sweet mash on the labels of these. That is different than a sour mash. Sweet mash means that they're starting each fermentation run with fresh ingredients rather than leaving a back set from a prior batch. While some distilleries utilize the sour mash process to essentially have some consistency in their flavor profile, there have been many distilleries lately that are really embracing more of the sweet mash style, and I think that it has resulted in some great whiskey. And Hard Truth is one of those brands that I'd include in that. Now, what is interesting about this distillate is that as it's gotten older, it still has some of that fruity backbone to it, with the peach or the apricot. But essentially those flavors of those fruits are getting darker, almost as if they're grilled or charred. And the oak is starting to take over. MSRP on this release is about $80. And I know it's available in about 20 states, so it might be available by you. You can go into Hard Truth's website. They have a little locator where you can see if it's distributed by you, but you can also buy it online. And I think they ship to like 40 states. So this is one on the list that is definitely accessible now. Number 4. All right. I'm totally going to cheat on this one, and I'm going to double dip. But I do think it's really exciting that we have very passionate people coming out of this community that now have their own brands and are taking their love for rye all the way to blending their own rye whiskeys. And with that, I want to highlight 2 beauties. First, the drum key. This one's called Ride Symbol, blended by Jason C. over at the Mash and Drum. Whereas in my other hand, I have the Exodus Rye Batch 4, blended by the Bourbon Junkies over at Evernorth Spirits. First, let's concentrate on the Rye symbol. This is the second blend Jason C. put together, coming in at 118.6 proof. One of the pricier ones on this list as well. I purchased this for I think $180 or $170. But if you are a Barrel Kings member, you do get it for a cheaper price than that. Now, 90% of this blend is a MGP rye. 7 years, but not the typical mash bill. It's actually their 51% rye mash bill. 8% of the blend is an 8-year 95.5 coming from Green River. And then additionally, which I think is interesting because it does give this one a bit of depth, only 2% of the blend is an MGP 95.5, but that part of the blend was actually finished in an Elijah Craig 23-year barrel. Flavor profile on this one is also pretty unique too. Actually kind of want to have a little nip of it here. But from what I remember off memory, it had this combination of the citrus flavors that you'd expect from a rye, but then it also had like a cherry cola note, which I always attributed had to come from that Elijah Craig bourbon barrel. And to finish something in an Elijah Craig bourbon that was 23 years old, that's pretty crazy. Even though it's only 2% of the blend, it adds a certain element to this thing. Cheers, everybody. Let's go in for a sip of this. It's been a little bit since I explored it. Yeah, that orange marmalade up front, pretty gorgeous. As you get to mid palate, that spice profile really comes through, and the fruits drift from that orange more to cherry. And then on the finish, you get this lovely cherry cola that really remains there. And you really do get some nice oak on the back end of the finish, too. Really good blend by Jason. What's also really cool is this actually won double platinum on the recent Ascot Awards. Jason's over here blending great whiskey, winning an award. But then right beside it, man, these Exodus Ryes that the Junkies are blending have been fabulous. This is batch 4, and this series is like a buy every time for me. They've earned a lot of faith from me when it comes to blending rye whiskeys. This one, though, is unique when it comes to the blend. It has a 6-year rye coming from Sagamore, so actually distilled by Sagamore. That's 52% rye, 43% corn, 5% malted barley. And then an 8-year 95.5 rye distilled by Middle West in Ohio. And I have not seen many brands blending with Middle West and combining it with other spirits like Sagamore. I mean, this is a rye whiskey combining Ohio and Maryland distillate. Now, this one's coming in at 130 proof. And if you do want a chance to purchase these, I mean, your best chance is either just joining the Bourbon Junkies Patreon and being quick fingered, or searching for it in Michigan, such as at the tasting room at Evernorth. And the Junkies do a good job keeping their prices down. I always really, really respect them for that. $80 for this batch 4 Exodus Rye. I've actually never talked about the flavor profile on this one. I think we're going to get a bunch of tiny little nips of some of these rye whiskeys here now that I'm getting into it. All right. Let's just do a little nip here. I got a whiskey St. Glenn for this one. Cheers to Durrell. Oh yeah, lovely nose, man. I'm a big fan of Middle West. So they are really tugging at my heartstrings using Middle West in this blend. I mean, I love the pumpernickel rye. All right, let's go in for a sip. Man, that one's got some beautiful fruits up front. Almost in like a tropical range for me today. What would you describe that as? Papaya, mango? I don't know. The fruits and the sweetness really carry to the mid palate as well. And while there's some spice on the finish, like this really does lack stereotypical rye markers. I mean, I think my favorite part of it as we're kind of going through this too is just that combination of the fruits and the consistent sweetness throughout. This is a really sweet rye, which isn't too surprising with that mash bill that had the 43% corn in it. But to sum up this spot, once again, really, really happy that the channels that really took it above and beyond were able to start their own brands are getting into rye whiskeys. Each channel talked about rye whiskeys quite a bit, did lots of reviews of rye whiskeys, and then they got their brands and immediately started releasing ryes. I love that. Number 3. This is one I almost passed on because I didn't even understand that this was coming out when I purchased it, and my eyes thought it was something different until I got a little closer to the bottle. But so happy I grabbed the Old Forester 117 series High Angel Share Rye. This one coming in at 110 proof. Got this one in Northern Kentucky at Party Source. Cost me $65. But for the most part, I have been seeing the 117 series throughout Kentucky, and I've been passing on them. I just really didn't think they were worth the value at 65 for the split bottles. And I thought this was the high angel share bourbon when I first saw it because I didn't know they were even doing the rye. And I almost walked by, and then at the last moment, my eye caught that, that's only three characters. That can't be bourbon. And then I realized it was the rye. And Old Forester rye is my favorite thing that Old Forester makes. Now, the thought process behind this is that this blend contains barrels that had really above average evaporation coming from hotter points in their rick houses, though the rick houses are temperature controlled, I'm pretty sure, but with less water in those barrels essentially and having that higher evaporation, it just creates a more concentrated flavor profile. But that concentration of flavors, man, it's like in the citrus range, getting into some brown sugars, a little bit strawberry, peppercorn, but then also those darker flavors coming from that higher malted barley ratio in this mash bill. 65 still kind of a high price for this because if you would have bought a full bottle, it'd be $130. And that's way more than a barrel strength single barrel. But even comparing this to the single barrel that I currently have on my shelf, man, this one holds its weight even at that lower proof. If this is still hanging out on a shelf by you, do not pass up on it. Though recognizing that pretty much I think it's mostly in Kentucky that you can get your hands on this. Number 2. This brand was on my top list of ryes last year as well. And here they are in 2026, picking up right where they left off with another great release. And I'm going to double dip on this one as well, just because I think the first one I'm going to show you is going to be less accessible, though it did take a day for it to sell out. So people had chances at this one. Whereas the other one, you might be able to find more often. But shout out to New Riff for continuing to make great rye whiskey. The one that's officially on this list is the latest batch of the 10-year-old Rye Whiskey. The 2026 batch comes in at 118.8 proof. And while I preferred the 2025 batch, which was one of my whiskeys of the year, the 2026 batch is like just a step behind it. It is still great and thus deserves to be number 2 on this list thus far. The mash bill on this one is 95% rye, 5% malted rye. Released at the beginning of the summer and only cost $89.99 for a 10-year rye. Always great prices coming out of New Riff. For this one, for me, this came off brighter, mintier, had a lot of like citrus, more in like a lemon zest kind of a range. Bit of white pepper, but then all that's balanced by that 10-year age statement and all of that oak. So by the time you get to the finish, like the fruits really darken up and it just has this beautiful profile. Now, if you can't get your hands on the 10-year and you missed out on that release, the way you can get these releases is by joining New Riff's Whiskey Club. And really, most of the things that they release under this high note series is just always worth a buy. But if you can't get those, keep an eye out for various groups around the country and various stores that are doing single barrels of either the malted rye or the rye. So New Riff is now doing 6-year single barrels. And I'm really hoping come next year, I mean, maybe they'll up it to 8-year single barrels. But these single barrels, now that they've gone beyond the 4 years that New Riff held the single barrel program down to for so long, these are awesome. And the prices on these are like probably about $65, $70. Somewhere around there. God, this one I got in my hand was a great pick by the Bourbon Jerk and Whiskey Weather. I know I'm a New Riff fanboy, but the whiskey's good and it's just getting better and better. Number 1. The number 1 rye on this list is very, very surprising to me because I really didn't plan to invest much of my money in this brand in 2026. But Heaven Hill must have felt what was going on with the reputation of the Elijah Craig barrel proof bourbon. And quite frankly, there is a lot of the A, B, and C batches from last year still hanging all over the shelves in Northern Kentucky. So they made an interesting business move to switch the brand in 2026 and focus instead on barrel proof ryes. And this is the A126 batch. I have not had the B526 yet. But the A126 is 120.4 proof and just a month away from a 12-year age statement. And I was able to get this in Ohio for approximately $75. So as you think about this list that we've been going through here, I mean, a bunch of these have been double-digit age statements, and most of these prices have been below $100. But going back to what we were talking about with rye recipes, the Elijah Craig recipe for ryes is 51% rye, 35% corn, and 14% malted barley. And this one is like a lovely combination of spice, cinnamon, cherry, vanilla, and all of it is wrapped around by this lovely sweet oak coming from that near 12-year age statement. I have not heard any impressions yet of the B526. I am on the lookout for one. But it would be funny if that one hits at this level, and then maybe my 1 and 2 is just going to be the Elijah Craig. And if C follows suit, maybe we'd have 3 of a kind. 1, 2, 3, all Elijah Craig barrel proof rye. That would be an amazing feat. So what do you think about this list? Are your favorite ryes of 2026 included? And if you had to add something, what would it be? Leave that in the comments so we can spread this information around to the rest of the community. And just remember, while you can always have more whiskey, you can never have enough whiskey friends. So take care of those around you, and we will catch you on the next one. Goodbye, everybody.